three-dimensional squat pivot matrix. We have 21 common ways to squat and dozens of hundreds of others uncommon based on how we pre-position our feet. Surviving and therefore moving is all about creating motion. It's about maybe pre-positioning for success to enable us to create motion. And so with the squat pivot matrix, our strategy can be for several reasons based on your pathology, your state of healing, and what your functional task sequencing is with regards to transformational zones, and what we're looking to do with regards to enhancing your performance amongst the performance enhancement therapy emphasis that we like to focus on. And so with the squat pivot matrix, we have the ability, and it's important that you go through and jam through this video first before you go through and just start going after all the squats. Because we have and we'll be taking you through some pre-positioned planes of motion based on where we're putting the feet. So let's say, for instance, with the nomenclature that we use in terms of our common positions, we have a sagittal plane. So we have what we're able to do in terms of staggering our feet either forward and backwards. That is our facilitation of motion in the sagittal plane. Frontal plane, we have a normal, typically whatever feels most comfortable for a patient, typically shoulder width apart. Wide is anything that is outside of what an individual considers to be normal. It could be an inch or a half inch wider or further apart than normal. It could be a foot or 2 feet wider. And then also in the frontal plane we have narrow. So narrow could be 1 inch inside of what normal is, or it could be feet completely together. And in the transverse plane, our tweaks are toes out and toes in. But when you think about a squat, we are positioned, and even though we are creating motion as we are three-dimensionally decelerating and stabilizing, it makes more sense that we should have a transition of motion occurring from one side of the body to the other. Of course, in the past we've used a lot of upper extremity drivers, lower extremity drivers to go after whatever our strategy is with regards to a recorrection of compensation pattern, to modify the motion and to enable our intervention to specifically enable healing through the motion that we're creating. But this is more authenticated to what actually occurs in function, and that's our opportunity to create motion. So what you're going to be seeing through these series of segments that you're going to be using as part of your home exercise program, which is customized for you, is in the sagittal plane in terms of our staggering. Let me come to the side here. Our staggering, so sagittal plane, either staggered right foot forward or left leg forward. And you'll see us reference, an RXX. That means right foot forward, left leg back. Frontal plane, we're in a normal stance. Transverse plane, normal stance, and vice versa with the L. So it's important to know that our objective is to create the motion. It's not necessarily about the position, and we need to be careful with these pre-positionings and the drivers that we're using in the frontal, sagittal, and transverse planes, that we're enabling ourselves to create the right amount of motion while not taking up too much slack. So we want to try to be a little bit more conservative with that. And what I mean by that is, let's say we are driving in the sagittal plane with the facilitator of motion being the right lower extremity with a preset left lower body, preset in the frontal plane in an X position, and in the transverse plane in an X position. Well, for some, maybe the staggering would be maybe ball of foot to big toe, or maybe some it would be heel to big toe and heel to big toe, or maybe for some it could be 3 or 4 inches further ahead or back based on the stability and three-dimensional mobility that individual portrays. So we need to be able to tweak that accordingly and customize it reference to ourselves. The same goes for the frontal plane pre-positions, or the transverse plane pre-positions, or the frontal plane drivers that you're going to see, or the transverse plane driven lower bodies facilitating motion. So it's important as we go through these series that we take a good hard look at identifying specifics of what's taking place in the video and what you need to be able to successfully reproduce. But we need to take that, you need to take that, customize it based on you and what you're able to handle, based on what we've done here and our work together at that, as that's going to continue to transform you further on down the road. So the big thing with the squat pivot matrix, we are creating and authenticating genuine, dynamic, three-dimensional stability, mobility, functional strength, and balance with the preset lower bodies and dimensions and the facilitating leg or lower body that is creating the motion, whether it's in the sagittal, frontal, and transverse plane. And as a clinician, using those as a way to assess and treat, going after where one is most successful rather than focusing on where they're least successful, and kind of tweaking the dimensions of what we're potentially doing with our upper extremity for reaches, rows and presses, pick and presses, etc. So hang on for the ride. This is going to be some pretty cool, exciting, and primal stuff.